Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
So welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. I'm one of your hosts, John Dyer, and with me is my co-host, Dr. Mohamed Saleh. And we're here to talk about the various characteristics that a good leader needs to have when doing team-based continuous improvement. There's actually 10 of these that we'll be discussing over the next several episodes. So if you want to learn what all 10 of them are, you'll need to keep listening to these podcasts, and eventually you'll get a chance to see what all 10 are. We're going to start with the first characteristic, which is being a selfless leader or a humble leader. So, Mohamed, why is this such an important characteristics for leaders to have?
Yeah, and John, the more I'm involved with change, the more rare I find true selfless leaders. And change is usually a very uncomfortable place for anyone. And you're going from the known to an unknown, a gray zone. You're going through this, I'll call it the mist. You're crossing uncharted waters, and it's scary. And so, as a leader, you need to embody these what I'll call the team over self mindset. And that team over self mindset means that you are there for others. You are there, and it starts to get into the act of humility. And what does it mean to have humility? It gets into the act of just being there for your team, and willing to do the little stuff that needs to be done, and you have no ego behind that. And it's also about removing obstacles that are in the way of your team. And so when I take a step back and say, what are some of the examples I've seen from a good selfless leader? I'll pinpoint my father. I would say he is a great role model of what it looks like to be a selfless leader. And I remember when I was 12 years old, and the Lean Mag, I had written something on this. We would finish praying at the mosque. It was every Friday. It was a ritual that we always did. And I used to always get bothered by the bathrooms. They weren't as clean as I wanted them to be. And then this was 12. Around the age of 14, 15, I went to use the bathroom, and I caught my dad cleaning up the stalls in the bathroom. And I was a little surprised. I was kind of aggravated that I had to wait that long. I didn't realize what he was doing in the bathroom. And he started talking to me about the importance of serving others. And if that's something that was bothering you, then what could we do to be that change agent? What could we do to do that? And I was like, but this is disgusting. And he was like, yeah, but can't be ever too big for that. And that kind of started I would say was the fundamental root for me to understand what does it mean to be a selfless leader. Cleaning the stalls, that is the essence for me, at least, of what a selfless leader looks like. If his son, was bothered by this, then many others are bothered by this. What could he do today to be that change? And I caught him in the act of excellence. And so I would say for me, that was the pure definition of a selfless leader, because ever since then, if I go into a conference room and I don't like how it looks, it's sloppy, I don't complain about it. But I make sure when I leave it, I set the example of what good looks like. So I would say that's one item. The other thing that is often, and I'm only going to talk about two right now, but the other thing about a selfless leader um, is the act of thanking people.
Mm.
Um, being able to go out there and figure out like, who could I thank today? Who could I catch in the act of excellence and say thank you? Um, Rather than, I was trained to look for problems, so sometimes that creates a scrutiny leader. And I think as a selfless leader, you need to figure out how to go out there and find the good. And sometimes you need rituals just to find the good and say thank you. And so I would say those are two key ingredients to have the characteristic of a selfless leader. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, the I go back to early in my career, um, nothing as dramatic as cleaning the stalls, but you know, I learned how to be a facilitator, a neutral facilitator, right? This was back in my GE days when we were doing workouts, and in the neutral facilitator, we've talked about that role a few times in previous podcasts, but basically, it's someone who is there to help the team be successful. They're not part of the team. They don't get involved in the discussions per se. They're there to, introduce the tools that the team might need to be successful, to make sure the agenda is being followed, to, address any disruptive behaviors, make sure there's some sort of a conclusion and some sort of action that is taking place, that sort of thing. And actually, a good facilitator um, does it so well that the team at certain points don't even realize they're there anymore. They just kind of blend into the background. But for those people who have facilitated, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of focus, a lot of effort. Um, but when I train facilitators, I tell them that, hey, don't do this for the glory. Don't do this for the recognition. Do this to help the teams be successful, even though that might mean that it's a thankless job in the end. And it's, again, though, it's a way of actually training people to be that selfless leader. Um, there was one particular example where a team was really struggling, and they asked me to come in and facilitate. And I did. I mean, I worked with that team for several weeks, and it took a lot of time. And we finally got on track. They actually were very successful in accomplishing a major improvement effort. And they did so well that they got a recognition reward by the head of our division. And it was nice. They had a big ceremony, and the whole team was up on a stage, and they had all their pictures up there.
I love
And
that.
I was sitting in the back, and not once did my name get mentioned, or was I anywhere up there. But I was okay with that because it wasn't my team. They're the ones that made the decisions. They're the ones that did the work. I was there to help them be successful. Um, and again, it was a great way of learning that particular lesson of, being that selfless leader, helping other people succeed. Those are the best leaders because they're the ones that, um, you know, that's what they aspire to.
Yeah.
It's not to, hit a particular metric or to achieve a particular task. It's to see other people being happy, being successful, being willing to do what is necessary to get the job done.
Yeah.
And now there is a flip side to this, though, and this is going to be my next question to you: is sometimes selfless leaders do blend into the background. So how do they get recognized? How do they get to a point where they're up for a promotion if the selfless leader is always putting other people before themselves?
Yeah. I want to comment on something you said about the team. It kind of it stirred up another thought there before, and then I'll answer that question.
Okay.
I was reflecting as you were saying that there's a book called Legacy. And in that book, it talks about the New Zealand rugby team. Um, and the New Zealand rugby team is, probably the best rugby team in the world. And they had inserted a reporter in that who writes the book, writes the book Legacy. And he talks about in the book that he observed after this huge victory, two people, the most senior two people in the locker room, they call it the shed in the book, um, go pick up two brooms in the corner of the room and start sweeping the shed. And he goes up to them and says, you know, why are you doing this? Don't you have like the towel guys or the less senior people in the room? They could be doing it. You're like the two stars here. And they looked at him and said, never be too big to do the little things that need to be done. And they set the example and they both started sweeping the shed. And he articulates like how profound it's very similar to the stall story, how profound that giving nature is. Um, so as you were talking about that story kind of popped in my head. I was like, oh, there's another one that's similar to what you're saying right now. Um, Now I'm going to answer your question. How would these two people ever be recognized? Um, well, if you're caught in the act of excellence, it has a more profound contribution to that person's life than if you were the hero. And so if your goal and passion is to grow those around you, inspire those around you, um, then you're getting your reward through something non-tangible. If your goal is to be the hero in the spotlight and wear the cape and the firefighter, you're not a selfless leader. Because when bad things happen, you need to be the one to be able to remove those obstacles and own it. When good things happen, you have to find a way to slide it and give that to your team. And as your team grows, that is your recognition that you're being you're doing a good job because you're inspiring all those around you that are growing, and that's your metric of recognition. Oh, all the people that work for John are growing. They're the top. They're everyone. Why are we always playing on people in John's team? Well, that's because he's growing them, and so you start getting a recognition in an indirect way because of the culture and the inspiration and self of purpose and the growth that your team is having. And at that point, it might be a longer road, but you actually get more recognition, more loyalty, um, and you inspire those to transfer what they're seeing in you to other people.
But again, it boils down to something we've talked about a few times before. The root cause for why this is so difficult is that we need to change the definition of a promotable leader. So you're right. Instead of promoting leaders based on
Fires.
how many fires they put out, how many people they control, how many metrics they hit. Maybe a better way to promote leaders is to, ask the people that work for them, what are your thoughts about your leader? How has your leader helped you improve your daily lives, improve your processes? How has your leader helped you to knock down roadblocks and make your work life a better place?
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of effort to actually, investigate those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
But it does get back to the point of, why can't we start calling our leaders coaches or, some kind of a term that is more reflective of this new kind of leader that we're trying to develop that, hey, a coach isn't on the field all the time. A coach doesn't run the plays. They call in the plays, but then the players get to decide ultimately what play that they're going to run based on the circumstances.
Yeah,
But they're there to help develop the team. They're there to
yeah,
coach. They're there to mentor, train, and get them to work as a cohesive group.
I think you're spot on. I think a good selfless leader is an individual who gives up his cape for those that he serves, um, and is invested in them to teach, coach, and mentor. So I actually love that comment about why don't we just call them coaches versus bosses or leaders? Because if your entire purpose at work is to grow those around you, you're a selfless leader. If your entire purpose is to support and remove obstacles from people in their way, to be there to understand what their downfalls are and blind spots and help them see it and grow from it, to be able to be there to demonstrate what humility looks like and that you're never too big to do the little things that need to be done, they're seeing that you're putting the team over yourself. They're seeing that you kind of forfeited your cape for their glory. And what ends up happening is then you are coaching them because now they're transferring what you've set onto another layer. And so now they become coaches to those around them. That could be their customers, suppliers, vendors, direct supports. It could be in their sphere. Um, but that is your glory in the end. It's that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we talk a lot about needing to invert the triangle of organizational chart, right? But again, that only works if everybody in that chain of command recognizes the value of that, right? Recognizes the value of a selfless leader. Because if I'm in an executive role and I'm looking at who I want to be my next, VP of this division, and I don't take those kind of things into account, then I could very easily bypass a leader that is fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
but because they haven't had that ego, because they're not wearing that cape, because they're not, shining the light on themselves all the time, and they're giving all the glory to the team, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, um, I don't know what they've done for me lately. So I'm going to promote this other person who does do all those things. And guess what? They're going to have a really tough time with that leader that now reports to them that's being selfless. So
Yeah.
it's got to be the whole chain of command that's bought into this concept. Now, why? So, next question is, why is this important? Why is it important to be a selfless leader?
Yeah. I don't think you could inspire real change without voluntary discretionary effort. I don't think you could inspire real purpose without uh, showing humility, being vulnerable, and being out there for your team. So I would say the why behind it is you're inspiring without power. You're creating people that want to follow your lead because of how much they're inspired, and you're creating purpose. And an organization that has no purpose, an organization that doesn't have any followers, and an organization that's not inspired, the root cause is often because there's no selfless leader. And so when I hear that as symptoms in an organization, I sometimes ask the leader, are you the problem? And what could we do differently? How do you say, how did I contribute to these problems? And reflect on maybe I need to be team over self rather than self over team.
Yeah. In my book, I talk a lot about what I termed enthusiastic productivity.
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of groups over the years, a lot of different organizations, and those organizations that have employees that are full of enthusiasm, They feel like they're being supported. They feel like they have a purpose. There's a sense of pride. There's a sense of accomplishment. They feel like they're part of a winning team. Those are the employees, those are the teams that can knock walls down for you. And I would venture to say are probably, at least 10 times more productive than the opposite. Employees that look like the zombies from The Walking Dead when they come to work every day
Yeah.
because they're beat down. They're not listened to. They're in broken processes. There's just no way to succeed. They're just making a living and going home and hoping that tomorrow will be a better day.
Yeah.
So again, at least 10 times, if not more, productivity. And that starts with a selfless leader, right?
Yeah.
A leader that is there to say, what can I do to help?
Mm.
Right? What can I do to help make your job better? What can I do to help us all be part of a winning team? And again, it's more like a coach. So that's what we need to recognize is the fact that, yeah, the selfish leader with the zombie employees might still be able to hit their metrics every once in a while. But think how much is being left on the table by the fact that they're just barely getting by versus really enthusiastically driving towards excellence.
I love that. I love that. Well, we dove into, I think, an area that I'm extremely passionate about, and I know we talk about this, but as we go through change, leadership character is a fundamental element. We visited today Selfless Leader, and I would say that is probably fundamentally the main predecessor to all of the other characteristics. We have at least many more to go, and so we'll be talking about the other nine in future episodes. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm just going to end with this. Being a selfless leader requires a process. You can't just assume you're a selfless leader. You have to have a process in your mind to say, this is what I need to do every single day, and remind yourself, I'm going to go into work. How am I going to be a selfless leader? Because if you don't have that intention, it's very easy to go to the selfish side accidentally. So it's not something that's just natural.
Very good. All right. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.